Hi, it's Porcia Chen Silverberg. Welcome to You Belong Here, the place to be for positive stories of immigrant women from all around the world. You will meet inspiring women sharing their successes, challenges, and how they are living a meaningful American dream. You may even identify with some of their stories. I hope you will be inspired to take action, engage in new conversations, and join us in a beloved community of belonging. So we have a very special guest here today, Maria Salamanca. Hi, Maria.
Hi.
And Maria is such a special person because she's so young, but so accomplished already.
Oh, thank you.
She was in last year's Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 in venture capital. And she is an immigrant woman herself. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. So I was born in Colombia, and my family has been in Colombia for as long as I can remember. And we came to the U.S. when I was about 6, 7 years old. I just turned 7, I believe, and we moved to Orlando, Florida. At the time, Colombia was going through, kind of a rough patch, which most people know about it because of Netflix, Narcos. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. It's it's a really popular show.
Yeah,
it's actually a great show. But
it is?
yeah, it's actually pretty historically accurate.
Wow.
So props to Netflix for getting that right.
Good to know.
But yeah, so the 90s, from the 70s to the 90s, was a very tough time in Colombia. A lot of economic hardship, a lot of violence. A lot of kind of what's happening now in Latin America and Central America with Mexico, and a lot of the drug lords that are really creating a lot of chaos around, and it's really dangerous. So that has kind of moved up since then, from Colombia up, but back then it was Colombia that was terrible. So my family decided to move here for a variety of reasons, but when I was 6, 7 years old, moved to Orlando, Florida. I was raised in Orlando, Florida from then until I decided to venture all the way to the West for college. I came to Berkeley for college and kind of fell in love with Silicon Valley and stayed here.
Very nice. So what was it like when you were 6 or 7? Did you even know what it meant when your parents told you, hey, we're moving to America?
I don't think so. So it was super interesting because my parents, we used to come to the U.S. all the time.
Oh, you did?
For summer vacation, and my parents loved to take my brothers to Disney. They were older than I was, so I think I got less of that than my brothers did. But we were coming, and my parents didn't want me to know because they didn't want me to like freak out. And when you go through immigration and all that stuff. They didn't want, a 6-year-old excited girl to be going around like, I'm moving to America.
Right.
Because for the most part, the way that the refugee status really works is you come here and then you file once you get to the U.S. And so they were just like, we're going to Disney and you're going to have a great time. And so I think it was maybe 6 months into being in the U.S. that I was like, why are we here so long? And then they're like, oh yeah, we they had to have a conversation with me about whether, we're actually thinking of staying here a little bit long term. And I was like really confused. So I was like, what are we gonna do here? Like what? I mean, home is back home. Like, what do you mean we're not going back home?
Right. And did you officially say goodbye to friends or
No,
family?
because I didn't know. I think my parents and brothers had a chance to say goodbye, but we also filed for refugee status, basically, back when we left, because we left fairly quickly. And so when you file for refugee status, you can go back to your country for another 10 years at the very least, or until the process is done. So my family and I didn't go back for about 10 years or so. So until we became citizens, which was when I was 18. I was a senior in high school, so I did not go to Colombia for a very long time. So
right.
Yeah.
So did you take the test?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you study for it?
I did study. I mean, it was very fresh. I mean, I was a senior in college, and I mean, in high school, and I had taken AP US, history, and a lot of Gov and Econ. So all this stuff was very fresh. But my parents' English wasn't as strong as mine. So I sat with each of them for a month or two every single day, going over the questions until they had it right.
Okay, so you kind of refreshed your memories too.
Yeah.
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 That's interesting. I think I became a citizen right around then too. Maybe I was a freshman in college. And unlike you, I thought I had it all figured out. I went to school here. I know all this stuff. Yeah, let me just say I almost didn't pass.
Oh, you have
It
to
would have
study.
been very
Yes.
embarrassing. Yes. My parents studied and studied and studied. And their English wasn't as well as, they could read and write better than they can speak. So for them, they really
Same.
put in effort, right?
Yeah, my parents were good if they're like, if we could read it and then pick multiple choice, but it's a oral exam.
Right, right.
And they're, it's very intimidating to have an oral exam for questions about civics and U.S. history and the Declaration of Independence. So especially if it's your second language, it's a very intimidating process.
It is, yeah. And that's really great that you chose to become a citizen at such a young age, because we actually, I'm sure you do too, know a lot of immigrants who are eligible. They have their permanent residence, but they haven't chosen to become a citizen yet.
Yeah, no, I think you see that more and more often. And I think there's some countries that have limited citizenship as well, like dual citizenship. So I think
that's true.
I know Colombia allows one dual citizenship, so we were able to have both. But I imagine for many folks, especially older, if they've lived in their country for, 20, 50, 30 years, it's hard to kind of say, home isn't home anymore, and say this is my new home.
Right.
So I can understand that.
Yeah.
Especially, with so much of the negative rhetoric that's going around. I think it's hard to say, I want to denounce my citizenship where I know I belong, for a place that not necessarily welcomes me every day. I think that's a tough for folks to do.
So what was it like as a young person? You were with your parents, so was it easy because you were so young that you just kind of started going to school? And did you speak English?
I did not speak English.
Okay.
No,
What was that like?
So, we're in Florida, so I think it was interesting because Orlando has at the time, not as diverse, but it really does have a decent amount of, I think it's the second biggest population of like Puerto Ricans, for example, in the U.S. after New York.
Wow.
And so there is Spanish speaking, but for me, it was a shock. The Spanish was very different. The Caribbean Spanish is different, so I had teachers that spoke completely different than I did. It wasn't different dialects per se, but it was different, and so I had to get used to that. And the education system in Florida can be a little bit tricky. Florida's not known for education, that's for sure. And so I was actually stuck in all Spanish classes for about 2 years, first grade and second grade.
Oh,
there was
so you
no
went through
English.
ESL.
There was some immersion program, right? But
okay.
I wasn't learning any English because everyone spoke Spanish, my teachers and my peers.
Right. So what do you think about the ESL system?
I'm sure there's better ways to do it. I don't think that was the best way. I didn't learn that much English. The only English I learned was when I was, out playing in the playground with other kids, and I had to learn how to play with them. So I was resourceful kid who wants to play, so you have to learn what to call toys and games. So that's kind of how I really learned. And by the time I got to third grade, I think I started actually pushing my parents to take me out and put me in the English speaking classes against the school's advice. Because the school was like, she's not ready or she's not testing for that. But I remember being like, I would just want to be in that class.
Wow.
Because I think I felt myself falling behind in a way because I wasn't learning the same content, and it was
you were
slower.
such a young person, and you were so conscious about that.
Yeah, I think I came with very strong math and science skills, and so I did really well in math and science, and so I think I could see when I was like having different math and science curriculum than my peers, which doesn't make sense to have just based on language, right? And I was, it makes sense for me to be behind in reading, right? If I don't know the language, but not math and science, and I was finding myself getting easier content, and I was like, I don't want easier content in math or science. So I think that's why I started to get very flustered and asking my parents. And my parents didn't know much about the education system, so they were like, if you think you want to get out of that class and go to a new one, we'll sign whatever. So
wow, they trusted you.
Yeah, I think they definitely didn't have much guidance, and they just trusted me. But I imagine not many parents or kids will do the same. So I got very lucky in that aspect.
So do you have some good pointers in helping people who are not speaking English or learning how to speak it? Any good advice on how to learn the language and learn it so well that look at where you are today?
Of course, the younger you are, the better, because you're just more immersed and you're quicker. And I think the main thing is about being less risk adverse. Like, don't be scared to kind of jump in there. So much of, I mean, with kids, it's like we learn the language because we're playing, and we don't think of it as, oh, I'm going to be embarrassed, so I'm going to say a bad thing. And, kids can be mean and say, you don't say it like that.
You didn't have any of that experience?
I mean, I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did. I remember the first time I heard someone, like one of the kids was like going around calling everyone like, oh, you guys are nosy, like you guys are nosy, because I don't know, we were like talking to the teacher or something, like trying to like figure out what the teacher, like who she was going to give the attention to or something. And I remember I didn't know what the word nosy meant. I was like, is he saying that I have a big nose? And I remember I like went home and I was like, Mom, do I have a big nose? And she was like, why are you saying this? So it was like those things that you get confused by, but I don't know, you're a kid. You bounce back real quick.
Well, that's good. And clearly you're an optimistic person. So any funny story or a slang or anything, funny food, or what were some of those early memories? I
mean, I think the hardest thing, and I don't know if there's like science behind this, but learning animals and fruits is very hard for a second language learner, at least for me, in that you just, different fruits, it's very hard to be like, for example, like for Latinos, the green lime, we call them limon, so it's like lemon. And it's really hard for us to learn that it's the opposite. Wow. And I don't know if we had a word for the yellow one and the green one distinctly, but if you say lemon to a Latino, they're going to think it's the green one, not the yellow one. Wow. And so, yeah, I always thought that was super interesting. So for me, I've always had a very hard time with fruits and learning it all over again.
What's your favorite fruit?
Watermelon.
Okay. And what do you eat at home?
Like when back in Florida or here?
Back in Florida.
There's a ton of Colombian restaurants and do that, but I mean, I love my mom's cooking. And I don't know if it's Colombian, but it's like home cooked meals.
And now?
I mean, I'm by myself. I definitely don't know how to cook, so I work in tech, so I do a lot of pressed juice, smoothies. I eat out a lot, probably more than I'd like to, but yeah, time is tough. I order out.
Well, we do live in a very, very exciting, wonderful area with lots of great food, right?
We do. We really do. Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoy, and I love all kinds of food, and every day I have a different, what I'm in the mood for. So I kind of leave it up to how I feel tonight at 8 p.m. to decide.
And then you'll probably work a lot of hours, I would imagine, being in tech?
I do. So my job is very flexible in terms of, there's a lot of working, but there's different parts to it, and I actually have a lot of flexibility of how I schedule it. But I do work long hours because there's a lot of events that come after the normal workday, the 9 to 5. Then there's a lot of networking events, a lot of panels, and a lot just different things to do.
Right. And being such a young woman, I mean, 25 years old, look at where you are.
I feel like I've lived a lifetime.
Maybe a couple, right? I mean, that's really impressive, where you came from Colombia as an immigrant, went to school, didn't know how to speak English, and now came out to California, went to Cal, and being featured in Forbes magazine. In fact, I think I did a little checking. Out of the 30 people, you were the second youngest.
So, I think so, probably. I think there was a 24-year-old.
So you're probably consistently, right, one of the youngest people in the room.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, and venture capital is a much older-leaning industry in general.
Right. Tell us about how it feels to be not only a young person, but a woman of color and an immigrant.
It's tough sometimes. I mean, in any room, usually I am the only woman, I am the youngest, and I am definitely usually the only person of color. I think, I work in a specific venture capital fund that we focus on immigrant founders. So,
which is so amazing.
Yeah, it's really exciting, but I'm usually not the only person of color in the room. But I mean, technology in general, I think the last year, about only 2% of venture capital money went to women. Wow. And the industry is, I mean, it's under 10% of venture capitals are women. And so, in general, we don't have a lot of women writing checks, and we don't have a lot of women entrepreneurs getting checks. So if you work in tech or if you work in venture capital, there's just not a lot of women around.
Things are changing, though.
Slightly, yeah, I think so. I think it still is not quickly enough. I think it's not good for anyone to have one race, one gender, one type of age deciding what the future of technology looks like, because it impacts all of us, right? We all have our smartphones, and we all watch our streaming and are impacted by all the changes that are coming down the pipeline. And I think it's important that when you are at a table that is deciding what technology gets the money, you have diverse perspectives. I mean, most people watch the show Shark Tank.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we do. But if you don't, it's very important. I mean, no one knows what's going to be successful.
Right.
And so seeing a pitch or an entrepreneur come to you and say, I have an idea that I'm going to build the next social network, then it's important to have different perspectives, younger perspectives, women, men, just different races.
Right.
Because we're a very diverse consumer base, so why would we not have the same at the investment level?
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And do you watch Shark Tank?
I do sometimes. It's entertaining. It's entertaining. It's different, but it's entertaining.
So have you noticed the difference from your immigrant founders who you guys fund from the ones that you see on Shark Tank?
Yeah, I mean, in general, from immigrant founders to the non-immigrant founders or native born. I mean, I think statistically says that if you are foreign born, you're twice as likely as a native born to actually start a business. And this applies both to technology and small business moms and pops. And the main thing is, as an immigrant, you come to this country and you don't know a lot. You might know only a couple things, right? Whether it's you're a mechanic and you know how to fix cars, or you know really well how to cook and you build your own restaurant. In the case of a lot of tech entrepreneurs that are immigrants, they study sometimes undergraduate in India, and they come here for grad school, some of the best PhD programs in the world, and they really want to stay here and build a company here and hire people here. And the one thing is that because of all these visa issues, and you have to have a company sponsor you, or you have to have X amount of money, X amount of employees to justify staying here, these founders will not let their companies die. I mean, they will work for free. They will work unlimited amount of hours, because for them, it's not just if I don't work or if I don't sell this, I lose my business. It's I have to go back home.
Right.
I don't get to stay here, and so that extra pressure is what really drives them to be way better with their money. They're way better with their time. They work so much harder, and I think and it's not like it's just teams made of immigrants, right? It's usually mixed teams. You have native borns and immigrant founders, so it just everyone works a lot better together, and it's great.
Huh. So actually, let's take a moment and talk about Unshackled. Where you work.
Yeah. My fund is called Unshackled Ventures, and we are a pre-seed fund. So that means that we tend to be the first money in, and we like to find teams at very early stages when they're just thinking about their ideas, when maybe they have a prototype, maybe what we call the minimum viable product, that they're testing out and learning to see if it really is something that their customers or users would like. And we invest up to $500,000. And then we take anywhere between 12–15% of equity in the company. We help them with immigration, give them immigration lawyers to support any of the questions and visas and filings that they need. We provide them with a very strong network in Silicon Valley of investors and entrepreneurs that support immigrant founders, and really believe that they are better for our economy, rather, job creators, not job stealers. And then we just provide them with our advice and our guidance and help them navigate this very complicated Silicon Valley ecosystem.
And your tagline of the firm, I think, creating is a 100,000.
Yes,
jobs
100,000 jobs for Americans. We're hoping, the more folks that we can get to stay here in this country and build their companies here, the more that creates jobs for everyone else. It's not like immigrants only hire immigrants. They hire everyone, and
that's a very good point.
Either those jobs are made here or they're made abroad, and we have our own companies competing against them, and no one wins. We want this talent to stay here. We want to have their innovation that they have.
Have you seen the impact of affordable housing be an issue for these immigrant founders?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing that we see the most common is for founders to move here, 1 or 2 founders. But as they start growing their team and hiring engineers and hiring product and marketing and HR, it's really hard for them to afford a lot of them because it's very expensive. And so a lot of what we're seeing is actually distributed teams, that we call them. And so you have teams that are now moving to Houston, to Dallas, Texas, to Florida. A ton of folks are moving to Florida.
Florida.
Even Sacramento. Sacramento is a very popular place to have teams at. And so what you see is you'll have 1 or 2 main founders, co-founders here in the Bay Area, and their teams in engineering and are anywhere else in the U.S. And sometimes they do have to hire abroad if they can't afford what they have here. And usually at the very beginning, early stages of the company, they don't have that much money, but they still have to get a lot of work done. So eventually, as they grow, they start kind of coming back to the Bay because, I mean, there's great talent here. It's just very expensive.
Sure, I know.
Yeah.
And as you know, I worked so many years in the nonprofit industry, and people in nonprofits are finding it very difficult too.
So I mean, teachers
teachers
as well.
are first responders, and really, there's just so many people who are actually middle class that can't afford to stay here either.
It's awful.
Which is, yeah, I know. Do you have any good suggestions, or in your opinion?
I don't. I mean, I myself, I'm young as well, so I think it's very tough for younger folks who think, when will I ever own a home, right?
Right.
I was reading this study actually today about how the average house in San Jose goes up by $800 a day in valuation.
Wow.
And so, I mean,
Wow.
I would have to save over $800 a day for me to be able to put down a down payment to keep up with just how much houses are going up.
Right, right.
And so, it's becoming increasingly difficult for anyone, including younger folks who don't have any money to start off with, right? I mean, maybe your parents can help a little bit, but if you don't have that startup capital to buy a home, like, I don't know how my generation in the Bay Area is going to afford housing.
I know. It's definitely a very huge issue.
Yeah.
And hopefully some of your founders will find an innovative solution.
Hopefully, yeah.
Or
I think a lot of it
solutions,
has to do with tech. A lot of it has to do with policy.
Yeah.
We need more housing, that's for sure. And a lot of it, yeah. And I mean, for me, what I'm thinking of is, I'll build my career here and hopefully invest money, but somewhere else, like in Florida, where I can probably afford a home, rent it out, have some passive income. But, it's still, I want to be here, so I would love to have money to be here.
Right. So I'm curious, when we talk about immigrant founders that you work with, who comes to your mind when I say the word immigrant?
I mean, everyone. I think that's the interesting thing. We're all immigrants. I mean, most of our founders, they really come from all over. I mean, we have Europeans, we have Eastern Europeans. There's a ton of really good tech talent coming out of Eastern Europe. Australians, we have a ton. Obviously Indian, China, a lot from Asia. But I mean, we just see talent growing everywhere. I mean, South America, Central America, Africa, Canada.
Wow.
There's a ton of Canadian engineers that come, and they have some of the best robotics programs up in Canada. So
did not know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So everything, it's just, there's so much talent from all over the world that wants to come study here, learn here, or be in Silicon Valley.
So they do still want to come.
They do.
Even in current times.
They do. I think, there's the chance that it might not always be the case if they don't feel welcomed. And a lot of obviously what's happening on the political spectrum is limiting a lot of these visas for high-skilled immigrants. And so that probably can deter a couple. But hopefully we don't do that.
Yeah, well, as you know, my organization that I started is called You Belong Here Foundation, and I have a consulting practice called You Belong Here. So the sense of belonging is really important to me. And I think one of the best ways for someone, immigrant or not, to feel like they belong in a community is through giving back and getting involved, being engaged in the local community, and work on, volunteer for local nonprofits or schools or wherever, but just to be really an active part of the community versus being insulated. So I know we met when you and I both went through the Latino Board Leadership Academy.
Yeah.
So I was obviously not Latina, but they allowed me to go through the program to check it out because I'm very interested in offering something like that for all immigrants beyond Latinos and Latinx, right? So how are you able to fit in board service and volunteerism in your busy life?
Yeah, I mean, I think, all of us, and it doesn't just apply to immigrants, but of course it applies to immigrants in that we all have something that we can give, we all have skills, or we have time. And this is valuable to other folks out there who might not have it or who don't have the skills that we have. So, for me, it's finance or marketing, or I know how to build a website. I can build a website in like an hour, a very nice, pretty website, right? And so for me, it's like, that's not a lot for me, but I know a lot of folks out there, small businesses or nonprofits could use that.
Sure.
And everyone has that.
Sure.
There's something that they're good at. I mean, I'm terrible at event planning, but so many folks out there love event planning, and that is really, and they love bringing people together and cooking and having events. So everyone has something to give in that way.
Do you have any suggestions in kind of helping my organization's mission forward and making connections, introducing local giving service opportunities to maybe some of the people, immigrants that you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one thing that for sure the community has, is that we all want to give back to folks who are going through similar journeys that we went through. And I think most of us get to that point a couple years in. But I have no doubt that we all remember how hard it was, and one helping hand that was there for us, and how we want to be that for someone else.
There's so much more I want to ask you, but of course our time is just about up. I want to give a special shout out to Facing History, a wonderful nonprofit in San Francisco. Well, actually, it's a national organization. So I was at an event last night and was able to take this beautiful table piece back, and I want to give them a shout out. And I just want to say to all of you that are watching, You Belong Here Foundation is leading a movement of inclusive sisterhood for immigrant women and their champions. We provide resources, training, and community. So please stay tuned, look out for future episodes. And if you have an immigrant story to share, or if you resonated with our mission of infusing positive stories of immigrant women into our community, please join us and check out our website, youbelongherefoundation.org. Thank you so much.
Or you're Asian, African, European, or American. Whether you pray to God or atheist is irrelevant, 'cause what you got inside is the same as all your brethren. From inheritance doesn't really matter, we're made of the same sediment. Whether you got a family or single parenting, or you're Asian, African, European, or American. Whether you pray to God or atheist is irrelevant, 'cause what you got inside is the same as all your brethren.